Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Roger's Real Time Talk Show event. Today, we have a special occasion going on. We have a roundtable event, and like I said, my name's Roger Hanson. And before we start, I'd like to go around and have everybody introduce themselves, say hi. We start with John.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead. Next.
Hey guys, I'm bobdub. Nice to be here. Thanks so much for the opportunity, Roger.
Glad you're here.
Hey, good day, Internet. My name's Vince McLeod. I run VJMPublishing, which is what I use to get my propaganda out onto the internet. And it's been good fun. I've met some really cool people through that. And it looks like Roger and John are another two. So I'm glad to be here with you guys.
Glad you were here, Vince. And with that being said, I would like to welcome all of you guys here, first of all, and then also let everybody know that John's from Wales, and Vince and Bob Dub are from New Zealand. They're coming to us because I've been watching their podcast for about a month or two now, and I've really liked what I've seen on there, for one thing. But Bob Dub reached out to me first, and then we've been talking, and she said that an incident had occurred with Vince here recently, and I wanted to start the topic up with that story and go from there and see what everybody's take on that is. Okay, would you be all right with that, Vincent?
Yeah, sounds fine.
Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you tell your story.
Okay, I'm not actually sure precisely which story that was. Someone's going to have to remind me.
Bob Dub mentioned something about, what was it again, Bob Dub? White Lives Matter shirt?
Yes, Vince has had a book called Clown World Chronicles, which he was selling on Trade Me, and somebody made a complaint and it was pulled. It was banned from Trade Me. But a couple of years ago, he also had a visit from the police, because another thing that he was trying to do to raise money was to sell White Lives Matter t-shirts. And so
All right, I'll explain this.
closed down for having opinions.
I'll explain the story. I was selling It's Okay to Be White t-shirts on Trade Me, which is like the eBay equivalent here in New Zealand. And the reason why I thought that would be a fun thing to do is because I saw it on Poll, which is a board on 4chan where people talk about politics, and people had made up this slogan, It's Okay to Be White, and they'd been printing it out, and they'd be putting it up as posters and printing it out as t-shirts and stickers. And many times when they'd done so, it would create a shitstorm, because the local authorities decided that it was some kind of white supremacist rallying cry, and cracked down on it and sent the police to go after the people who had put the posters up. So I thought, being me, I thought, well, we're going to have to test to see if New Zealand's got actual free speech rights or not. So I printed out some t-shirts that said It's Okay to Be White, just exactly like the posters, and sold them on Trade Me. And one day I woke up to see that I'd made a sale, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then 15 minutes later, I saw I'd made another sale. I thought, wow, that's what a bit of luck that is. And then 10 minutes later, I made another sale, and I thought, hey, that's more than just coincidental that I've made 3 sales just like that. And then a friend of mine rang me up, South African friend, and he said, hey, Brew, you better check the News Hub, because your company's been mentioned, News Hub, for selling these It's Okay to Be White t-shirts. So I went and had a look, and apparently the Human Rights Commissioner here in New Zealand, a very high-ranking politician, one of the top men in the government structure, had said that there is no place in New Zealand for t-shirts that say It's Okay to Be White, and he declared in the media that I was ideologically adjacent to Brenton Tarrant for pushing what he called a white supremacist narrative. Now, if you don't know who Brenton Tarrant is, he was the mass shooter who shot up a mosque here in Christchurch, killed 51 people in 2019. And he wasn't actually a white supremacist. If you read his manifesto, it's very clear that he's got other motivations. But In any case, the police sent a couple of people to my house, a couple of officers to my house to interrogate me about this incident. They said that it was very concerning that I'd been spreading such messages, but that didn't go very far because I asked them to leave the property. I'm not actually obliged in New Zealand to answer their questions. I'm not sure how it is in America. I think it's similar.
Mm-hmm.
But then a couple of years after that, I wrote a book called Clown World Chronicles, which is the best-selling book I've ever written. And that Clown World Chronicles, it's basically a satire of the modern world, which is the sort of capitalist communist system that we all live under. And there was a local Marxist here in Christchurch, New Zealand, who took offence to yeah, Bob's got a coffee. You see Honko on the front, Clown World Chronicles. And one of the local Marxists here took offence to the theme of Clown World Chronicles, which is, of course, satirizing communism to some extent. And he cooked up a hate mob on Twitter and got all these people to write in and say that the book should be banned. And then they eventually took that down as well. So really, my two major sources of publishing income, in New Zealand at least, have both been destroyed by essentially communist agitation.
That was about the best explanation I've heard so far, and you did it quick.
Yeah, good.
You did it quick. And we do have something to that effect where, especially being on private property, is that where it fits in with your case, where you could tell them that you didn't want to talk to them and they needed to get off your property?
Yeah, that's correct. And the thing is, I've just been sitting in my kitchen smoking some weed, which isn't actually legal in New Zealand, right? So I really did want them to hang around and smell it. So I wanted to get rid of them as quickly as possible. So that was quite funny. I mean, I was sitting there having a puff, and then the last thing you really want is the actual literal police to knock on your door. But they weren't interested in weed or anything else. They just wanted to try and get information out of me.
Yeah, so with all of that being said, I'm going to open it up to you two. Is there anything that you want to ask Vince concerning what he just said?
It just reminded me of something when you said about you had your weed in the kitchen. I remember seeing a story about the Rolling Stones. They were in a hotel room and something knocked on the door, and the drummer or someone said, "Oh, the police are outside." So they rushed into the bathroom, flushed all their stuff down the drugs down the toilet, and they opened the door and there was Sting and Stuart Copeland, the music group, the Police. The Police. I just reminded about when you said about that. I just thought about it. But I think I don't know. You may think. I think the world's gone effing mad, to be honest. In your country, in our country, it's the same. They're just stupid. It's just, you know what I mean? It just makes my blood boil, you know? It's the same in this country. We have a song we've had every Christmas playing, Fairy Tale of New York by the Pogues. I don't know if you're familiar with it in your country. Now been banned from this country because of lyrics, or they're upsetting the woke brigade because of certain lyrics, even though for the last 30 years we've had played every Christmas and nobody's gone out and gone ballistic because of the lyrics of it. That now, no, not allowed it anymore. Stuff like that. It's just, I think it's all crazy. Makes me mad. And even your T-shirt. What's the difference between your T-shirt, being able to wear that, to somebody who wears a T-shirt Black Lives Matter? What's the difference? There's no difference. It's just a point of view, and I think the world's gone effing mad, to be honest with you. I really do. I think it's gone crazy, and they just need to.
What's crazy?
Yeah.
About the T-shirts is that Trade Me actually sells T-shirts that say Black Power, and it's okay to be white. It's not a white supremacist slogan, really. It doesn't say white power. It doesn't say whites should dominate the world. It doesn't say exterminate the blacks. It just says it's okay to be white. In other words, like I said on my Trade Me listing, it's an explicitly anti-racist statement because it's going against the anti-white racism that you often see.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It really is. It's not. You know, it's like if the minorities complain about something enough, they get their own way. That's the way it seems to be in this world. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. I do believe that sometimes in certain situations, Black lives are affected by the situations they're in, different scenarios, what have you. And yes, they do feel that they get injustice, and I do get that, yeah. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with a t-shirt like you've done. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it at all. You're not inciting violence. It's just the world's gone mad. They're just like trying to answer to the woke brigade, and oh no, this might offend so and so. And it's all mad, you know. It really is. It's just not on, in my view. I think they need some common sense needs to be it all around. It's in every country. I think we say with New Zealand, it's the same with our country, and I imagine it's the same in America, Roger. But it's just some common sense needs to come out of all this. It needs to change. It's just getting ridiculous. That's my point of view.
When I hear of all of this happening around the world, it tells me that there's something behind it that's pushing it. You know what I mean? It's not something that just springs up out of a certain area around the world. If you hear about it happening in England, Wales, New Zealand, Australia, the United States, Canada, if it's happening in all these places, you know, there has to be something behind it. And I personally feel that it has to do with Marxism, like you said, and socialism. I'm not an advocate of socialism at all whatsoever. I have personal reasons that are involved with that too, that involve my children, and it also involves, you know, the what I've learned when it comes to the elderly and how they treat the elderly when it comes to these social programs. And people with mental illness and children that are mentally retarded. I mean, and you know, that does happen. There are people born with mental retardation, you know, but when a government can go in and take complete custody over a person because they're mentally retarded, that's just completely wrong. And I've read about this stuff and the things that are involved with it, and it's really horrible. And then it gets even worse here in the United States, because now we have people wanting to go and tear down national monuments, you know, because it has a bad history on them, you know. For me, I don't agree with that, because I think I'm strong with the old saying, if you forget the past, you're cursed to repeat it, you know what I mean? I believe in that 100%, and I think that's what is going on here. They're trying to erase our history and make it out to be something that it really wasn't, and that's what my take is on a lot of that. So
I just want to say before I forget, sorry, in the UK during the peak of the COVID outbreak, the first main one, they brought UK brought a law in which they kept very, very quiet about. Basically, people with disabilities, stuff like that, they brought a law in. Say they were in hospital because of COVID, and they went into cardiac arrest. A do not resuscitate rule. It doesn't matter what the patient said. They brought that in, saying if they wanted to be resuscitated or not. The government brought the law in. Do not resuscitate. They brought the law in. Overruled what the patients wanted. They brought the law in, and they kept it very, very quiet. And yet we found out about it afterwards, which I was absolutely disgusted about. I've got disabled children myself, and I just really, it was a poor bit. I don't know if it's the same in the other countries, but just in the UK, and I just wanted to point that out because of what Roger said before I forgot about it. So it's me.
You know, the one thing that made me think Britain was really having troubles that you alluded to before, that we've sort of lost our way collectively all around the world. But the thing that made me realise that Britain had lost its way was the Count Dankula incident. You know about that one?
What?
Count Dankula, he trained his dog, a pug dog, to do a Hitler salute in response to Count Dankula saying "Sieg Heil." And so he trained his pug dog to do a Hitler salute, and then he recorded a video of this and put it on social media for the sake of, because it was his girlfriend's dog. So he was just trying to wind her up, essentially, and show her, hey, look, I've taught your dog to do a Hitler salute. And then the next thing is he ends up getting arrested. I think he was sentenced to 6 months in prison, but that may have been suspended, that sentence.
I didn't know about
Do you know
that.
about this case?
I didn't know. No.
I think he's been arrested again just recently because he said something about Palestinian flags or something. So he's been arrested again for hate speech.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was the same guy, but I also did see a video of someone in Britain just walking down the street and seeing all the Palestinian flags at the Palestinian pro-Palestinian protest, and he didn't like that. I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said, "Oh, look at this, shouldn't be here, blah blah blah." And then the next thing, there's a video of him that his wife had recorded of the cops turning up to his house at like 1 o'clock in the morning and banging on his door. And then I can't remember what they did, but he was charged with some kind of hate disorder.
Yes.
So that could have happened to me for selling It's Okay to Be White t-shirts if they had had such a law on the books.
See, I look at it as like the West is all pro-Israel, and Israel can do nothing wrong, and what have you. And yet, if you say anything on the other side of the fence, oh no, you can't do that. You're inciting hate or whatever. And everyone's entitled to their opinion. Just we're not allowed to air it, are we? You know what I mean? If you do, you're going to end up in prison, or you're going. Well, that's what Britain used to complain about years ago with Russia. They were about communism. They said, "Oh, you've got no free speech," and look at the way it's coming in this country now. It's going ridiculous. It's going that way. Absolutely, if it's not already there now,
Yeah, well, we're getting the same story. There's a guy here in New Zealand named Nathan Symington, and he's currently in prison. He got sentenced to 900 days in prison, so 2.5 years in prison, for sharing some links to the mosque shooting video that Brenton Tarrant took when he was shooting up Al Noor Mosque. And Nathan Symington had shared a couple of links to this, plus a link to a video of him shooting up a banner of Jacinda Ardern, who was the Prime Minister here until recently. And so he got 2.5 years total prison for this. And every day, or every week at least, you read in New Zealand about someone getting home detention for killing somebody. There was a drink driver just yesterday who was given home detention for killing somebody. And there's been people who have actually beaten other people to death with their own fists and got home detention. Rapists have got home detention. And then a guy who shares links to the mosque shooting video goes to prison for 2.5 years. Yeah. It's like the sentence is supposed to fit the crime. That's what we're told is the core of justice. Yeah. And that's obviously not happening in New Zealand.
Yeah, same with us, not with us either.
I think what for me is most amazing about this is the fact that it is happening in New Zealand. You know what I mean? Because like, I remember when I was younger, like when feminism hit Australia, that was a big deal. They even made a movie out of it. You know what I mean? It was a big deal because like they were supposedly like the last area where feminism actually hit, and then I started hearing from you guys and bobdub talking about Australia and what's going on there, and it just blew me out of the water. Like the fact that so much socialism is hitting New Zealand like it is, and I just didn't picture it happening there. All my life I've always pictured what was his name, Tasmanian Devil. You know what I mean? That was New Zealand for me. You know what I mean? Oh, Tasmanian Devil.
Yeah.
And things have just changed so much there. It just blows me out of the water. I can't believe that.
Yeah, the problem with us is that we never had a specifically freedom-based revolution like Americans did. So we never had a revolution that specifically wrote a constitution that said you're allowed to have free speech rights and blah, 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 blah. But we haven't had that since the beginning. In theory, we've got free speech rights. I mean, we also have in the New Zealand law a Bill of Rights, and it also has free speech that says you're allowed to express yourself however you like. But that's obviously not true, because if that was true, I wouldn't have had the Human Rights Commissioner go to the media to say I was ideologically adjacent to a mass terrorist.
Now, when
I mean, you have to laugh.
I'm so sorry. I mean, honestly,
so ridiculous.
So ridiculous to say that about you.
You mentioned this before in one of your other interviews. Do you believe that the majority of your problems is the fact that you're a colony of the British?
Not really. I mean, if you look at the other colonies around the world, if you look at South America, if you look at the Spanish colonies, if you look at Portuguese colonies, if you look at French colonies, even Dutch colonies like Indonesia, South Africa, it seems like the British colonies turned out pretty good, relatively speaking. Like New Zealand, Australia, Canada, America, Hong Kong, Singapore, they got a high standard of living compared to the other colonies. So I don't think that's the problem. I think our problem is it's not so much economic, it's not so much legal, because I think the British are pretty much masters at both those things. I think our problems are spiritual. Like we've really got a big gap at the center of our souls where we don't actually believe anything. It's like Tyler Durden, Brad Pitt said in Fight Club. He said, "Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives." And I've always thought that was like the motto of my generation, because it really is for us a battle for finding spiritual meaning.
So, war to find a connection.
Yeah, well, it's hard for us because we've got what I call the Clown World fork. I wrote about this in Clown World Chronicles in the chapter about spirituality. You're kind of forced, if you grew up like I did in 1981 in New Zealand, you're kind of forced to choose between Christianity and atheism. And you don't really have any other choice. Any other choice is considered crazy or just too far out there to even be acceptable. And I call this the Clown World fork because many people believe that neither of these two options are acceptable. And of those who think like this, they often go into occultism or at least exploring spirituality in some unorthodox way. So yeah, I'm interested in those sort of people.
So with that, with your clown, what was it called again?
Clown World Chronicles. Yeah, the concept of Clown World.
Yeah,
it's not my own. It's from Pole, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it would be interesting to chronicle it in the same way that I don't know if you've heard of the Anglo-Saxon Chronicles, but there was a book written in like the 9th century, I think it was, and it basically chronicles the events of the Anglo-Saxon England and the sort of things that happened, like Viking raids and peasant uprisings and that sort of thing. And so I wrote this book, Clown World Chronicles, to try and explain Clown World and why it was happening. And what I came down to was essentially the bad guys of Clown World, this force that you spoke about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of operates behind the scenes, is what's called Globo Homo, which is another way of saying it's an alliance between capitalists and communists, globalist capitalists and globalist communists. And they have come together to try and reduce our lives in the Western world down to the lowest common denominator. And so they spread what's called goy slop, for example. You've seen this on Pole, like really bad food, and they promote tawdry and cheap sexuality, and they promote soulless atheism and consumerism, and all of these things that have really just led to the problems that we've got, the malaise that we have in the Western world today. So Clown World Chronicles was a way of describing that and satirizing it, and in the last section, hopefully providing a way that you can potentially overcome Clown World.
Okay. Now, you've been really, really quiet, bobdub, so we're going to have to hear a little bit of your take on all this.
Well, actually, I was wondering, I mean, it's beyond me. I mean, I lived through I was born the year the Rhodesian Bush War started. So I grew up through the entire Rhodesian Bush War, and Mugabe was voted in when I was 18. So my childhood consisted of living through communist China, getting rid of the British Empire. And so I came over here to New Zealand, and I thought that I was coming to, I don't know, civilization. And I have been horrified at this racism and the violence and the hatred between people here. And it's just shown me that this is a global issue. people can't get along with each other. And people, I mean, like what we've got happening in Eastern Europe, people are happily killing each other. I mean, I don't know how I've lived till 60 and I'm still so horrified that war is a thing. Like, so yeah, it's amazing. There isn't a sort of, there doesn't seem to be a good place to be at the moment in the world. And so I'm really, one of the reasons that I've been so involved with Vince and making the shows is because of this very strong drive that he has to try and bring back a sort of a spiritual revival. Particularly, I think, because I feel that Vince has really a lot of experience with the real bad.
That was John's ringtone.
Oh no.
We're still listening.
Yeah. So yeah, Vince's childhood was very negatively impacted by societal dysfunction. And so I feel that, you know, he's sort of almost a living example of how you don't need to let these things actually end your life. You can be a very successful person. So yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to me to be involved, particularly in elementalism, which I think is that you've sort of tried to blend Eastern European or Eastern Dharmic religions with the old Greek religions, have you? Or Greek philosophy, Vince, with elements?
Yeah, I suppose you could say that elementalism was in some ways a blend of the Eastern religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism with the Western occult traditions that would have developed from the Greco-Roman mystery schools.
Right. And see, what I've learned from that too is there's a lot of Indo-European mix when it comes to the traditions of the Greeks and the mystery schools. If you go and you start doing research in Zoroastrianism and Hinduism and Buddhism, you'll find out that they're all intermingled with one another. And it comes out of the Russian steppes and around the Caspian and Black Sea and then down into Greece. So that's a lot of good stuff that I've been researching too. I really love that. That's one thing that really caught on to me. And then when you was talking about Plato,
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's something right there. I think all of us should get together and have a good discussion on just about Plato. You know,
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome to do. But
I think everybody. There are a couple of books by Plato I think everybody should read, and they're Republic and Timaeus. And Timaeus talks about the ancient European religious and spiritual beliefs before the Christians came, and they're very similar to what exists in modern Hinduism. So Plato writes about reincarnation and about karma as if they were just established facts, because they were believed by basically everybody he knew. So it's really fascinating reading that as somebody, like I said, who's been subject to the clown word fork, to read Timaeus and think this is what Europeans, my cultural ancestors would have believed 2,300, 400 years ago. That fascinates me.
Yeah, I do find that fascinating too, and it's hard for people to really grasp onto that concept, because they're so dead set on the way they've been taught all their life. They went to school, they learned about Greek mythology, they went to college and learned a lot of saturated, watered down history. And then you tell them all this, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't learn that in college, or university, or whatever, And it just, it's kind of like its own roadblock. It's hard to communicate that stuff with people when they don't want to actually listen. So.
Yeah, well, I was in high school. I was told that in ancient Greece they bummed little boys. And so if you're interested in Plato and Aristotle, that was probably the path you were headed down. So that's pretty strongly anti what we're talking about here. But I think a lot of it is there's a certain element in Western society that would like to deny how great civilization was in the Greek and the Roman times, and this element has spread a lot of lies about how the ancient Greeks were. For example, in Symposium, which is written by Plato argues specifically that if you're going to have what they called an erotic educational relationship, like they did in ancient Greece, then the boy shouldn't be younger than the age of reason, which they put at the age before you had a beard. So, they're talking about men old enough to have beards, which means they're not really pedophiles. So these are just the sort of things you get told to try and discredit ancient knowledge. Like I was also told that the Romans sacrificed children. They would sacrifice them in fires, and these stories are just the kind of things you hear, but they're not really true.
Yeah, I ended up having a big problem with that, with going farther back with the Canaanites, and when you hear people talk about the Phoenicians, they say that to this day, and all the information that they get it from is all Christian text. But the Christians weren't even around during the time of the Canaanites or the Phoenicians, you know what I mean? And they talk about Moloch, and to this day, archaeologists have found no evidence that the Phoenicians or the Canaanites worshipped a deity that went by the name of Moloch. There's no evidence whatsoever, but people will fight and argue with you and try to tell you that you're wrong because they read it, but what they're reading is like Christian text that was written like 2,000 years after the Phoenicians were gone. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've heard a story about that explains that we're now in the age of Pisces, which is the one of the 12 great astrological ages, and each one lasts about 2,000 years. So there's 12 of these ages that span a 24,000 year great cycle, now in the age of Pisces. But Moloch, the bull, he represents the age of Aries, which was the previous age before the age of Pisces. So every time you go into a new astrological age, the gods of the previous age become the demons of the new age. So Moloch, which was the bull, representing the age of the age of Taurus, not the age of Taurus, not the age of Aries, age of Taurus, the bull, and so in the age of Pisces, Moloch became the demon. In the age of Aquarius, which is the next age to come, the gods of the age of Pisces will become the demons, and so on. It'll just go through this great cycle.
Now, is that Greek?
Now, this goes way back to, this is at least Babylon, if not older. So I'm talking maybe Sumeria. A lot of the really old knowledge comes from Sumeria. Like they were the first to divide an hour into 60 minutes, for example.
Right.
And that's where the 60 comes from.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. I mean, they were the first real Western civilization. So a lot of really our lives today are just been passed down what they did 6, 7, 8,000 years ago. Yeah, I love all that history. Yeah, it's wicked.
Yeah, I love it too. I just finished up doing 12 episodes of it. I had to back away from it for a while because the Canaanites. You can't talk about the Canaanites without there being some kind of freaking turmoil. You know what I mean? So I did 2 more episodes and that was it. I mean, I can't keep up with the big dogs. That's all I can say, man. Like I like to listen to a guy. He goes by the name of History with Cy, and he does like real good short history videos that I like to listen to. And that's how I wanted to do it. I wanted to set it up to where it was just history, had nothing about the mysterious island of Atlantis or anything like that, or anything mystical. And everybody that's on Minds.com started coming on and talking about the city of Atlantis, and then they started talking about this, and I'm like, man, this is supposed to be a history lesson, you know what I mean? Come on, let me do a freaking history lesson. And it just, Minds is, you'll never find a website like Minds.com. That's all I gotta say. It's just, you'll never find one like it. So I'm gonna shut up now. I think I've embarrassed myself.
Another thing that I wanted you to tell Roger about, Vince, was about the whistleblower, the data leak that we've had, because that's huge, and a lot of people in America are really interested to know what's going on there.
Yeah, like I haven't followed this story super closely, but from what I understand, there was an IT expert who worked for the Ministry of Health, and he managed to download a whole bunch of information, which he then anonymized. These were vaccine records, which he then anonymized so you couldn't tell whose data it was, and then he released them. And apparently some people have said, and I can't confirm this myself because I haven't looked at the data myself, but some people have said that the data tells us that there's been a 10% increase in excess deaths since the COVID-19 vaccine was rolled out. And the government straight away denied this. They said it was misinformation. And then the man who did this leaking, whose name was Barry Young, he's been arrested and presumably is in prison awaiting interrogation or trial, because the government really wasn't very happy about this information, suggesting they may have negligently caused the death of about 10,000 people in New Zealand through pushing them through a vaccine that hadn't properly been tested.
What do you think about that, John?
Well, I think it's true, totally true. There's sort of, I was only reflecting on this today about the vaccine. There's something in it they're not telling us for sure. There's definitely something in it. I think I know what it is, but I'm not going to say it publicly because I might be ridiculed, but I'm not going to say because I'm wrong about that, but there's something definitely in it and they're not telling us what it is. And it's like this vaccine, this is worldwide, it was like a big test, some sort of big test, and it's obviously, it's a test that we're not told about, and I think us obviously getting a lot of side effects and people are dying and stuff like that, and yeah, there's a bigger picture to it all, but I'm not really sure what it is yet. I just know there's a bigger picture to all of this testing and stuff, for sure. I don't really know in what way, but I just know that there is. And I've had the vaccine before, but I got shown because I've got a good connection with the source, because I'm a healer and stuff, and I got shown that whatever effects was done to me, they've been reversed. It's been taken from me. So I've been told that. I've been told that. So, but I won't have another vaccine again as long as I live, for anything. And if I end up in a box sooner because of it, well, so I do. I'm not going to say it's wrong or right. I'm just saying it's what's right for me. You know, everyone's got their own opinion, and I respect that opinion. If you guys are pro-vaccine, that's totally fine. I respect that, but it's not for me. And there's definitely, I'm convinced there's a big this all this COVID and this vaccines thing is some sort of big test, and I just don't know what it is, and I just think it's something behind it all, but I say I don't know what it is as yet. That's just my opinion, you know.
I'm pro some vaccines. Like, I've got no problem with little kids getting rubella shots or polio shots or whatever it is, but I didn't get the COVID vaccine. And the reason why I did not get it was because I no longer trust the medical system on account of having been involved in cannabis law reform for 16 years and having observed that they're quite happy to tell lies about the medicinal effects of cannabis. They're quite happy to say to somebody like me who might have trouble sleeping, so I can go an entire night suffering from insomnia, that can be cured with one joint just put me to sleep. And they're happy to say to somebody like me that I ought to just suffer. And I thought, well, that's I learned about Rockefeller medicine, of course, and they're just trying to make money and all that jazz. So I don't trust them anymore. So when they said that I had to take a coronavirus vaccine and they were getting all hysterical about that, I thought to myself, how is the government's hysteria around this vaccine any different to its hysteria around cannabis, where people were told if we smoke cannabis we turn into rapists and murderers and all of this? We're told the same story with the vaccine. If we don't get a vaccine, we're going to kill grandma because she's vulnerable to coronavirus. So we have to achieve herd immunity by all taking a vaccine, do our patriotic duty. And I thought to myself, how's that any different? It's just the same hysteria, which I actually think is part of the reason why they introduced it, because they're experimenting, like you say, John. There's definitely an experimental edge to all of this. And I think they're experimenting to see the extent to which they can still manipulate public opinion. Because you see how they got just about everyone dancing to the tune when the coronavirus was on. So if they wanted, for example, to declare war on Russia, declare war on China, they could probably say, right, we just did the same thing that we did with the coronavirus, and we'll get 95% of the population will go along, and they'll coerce the remaining 5% into either shutting up or going along with them.
Yeah.
Now, right there, that brings me up to something that I heard bobdub mention that I really agree with, that she said, okay, and it's this. It seems odd that freaking half of the people who are conservative are supporting Israel, and the other half who are liberal and Democrat, Labor Party, they support the Ukraine, okay? And it seems like you have these two separate entities supporting these two separate groups, and at the same time, and I think that's something that needs to be looked at right there too, when it comes to that. I do agree with that. And then you were talking about herd immunization, where if you do enough vaccines, it'll automatically vaccinate people who haven't taken shots, And for me, what I find disturbing about that is, they're doing that without my consent. I don't agree with any kind of vaccines. I had not bobdub. I've had do better on one of my conspiracy ones.
Nice.
And we were going to talk about COVID, but I wanted to add just vaccines in altogether, okay? And I've been curious about vaccines since like the beginning of the 2000s. And what really stands out to me about all that is like it seems like they're really wanting to push these vaccines that have harmful things in it. Like back in the day, they were putting mercury into vaccines, so and it had nothing to do with the actual vaccine that was actually helping you. You know what I mean? It was part of the ingredients that help the vaccine last longer, the preservative. And they were putting mercury in there, which was harmful to people. And that was just to keep it as a preservative, and I found that appalling. They finally stopped doing it in like 2000, 2003, somewhere in between there. But it keeps going on, and now a lot of people don't know this, but like your insulin, if you're a sugar diabetic, okay, if you're a diabetic, about 80% of the insulin that people who are diabetic are taking is genetically modified, And to me, I find it kind of strange that with this COVID vaccine coming out, they're wanting to push the genetically modified vaccines. Why can't they come up with a vaccine that's not genetically modified? They don't want to do that. And I believe that the COVID vaccine actually opened a floodgate for these companies to advance their genetically modified laws so that they can actually get away with giving them to us without our consent. That's why one aspect of it that I think a lot of people don't realize either. Like, get people scared, tell them that the savior is a vaccine. Oh, and by the way, it's genetically modified, so if you guys don't want to take genetically modified things, then just die, Well, what's the majority of the people going to do? They're going to take that vaccine, And I'm like John, I have no problem with people taking it. My dad and mom both got the vaccines. I never got one, and I refused to take one, but I have no problem with other people doing it, but I'm not going to do it. So that's all I got to say. It's yours. You guys, it's your turn.
Yeah, I'm glad my mother took it, because I go to an Indian restaurant every Friday and get takeaways to celebrate the end of the week. And the government here in New Zealand made it a law that you weren't able to go to a restaurant if you didn't have a vaccine passport, that you're able to prove that you had been vaccinated. So I had to sit in the van while my mother went into the restaurant for me and got my meal. And that was really silly, but that goes to show what happens, what the government can do to you. They can really just make you dance. They can say, dance, monkey, dance, and if you don't do it, you don't get to eat.
Exactly.
It was the same in the UK. You couldn't go to the cinema unless you had a vaccine passport and all sorts of stuff. But I just didn't do any of it. I even though I had, at the time I had the vaccine, I still didn't have the passport thing. I didn't bother. Just didn't go anywhere. I thought to myself, well, why would I want to go to the cinema and be surrounded by people? And if this vaccine is right, if this virus is rife in the country at the moment, why the hell would I want to go to the cinema anyway? You know what I mean? You're asking for trouble, aren't you? You know what I mean? So I sort of stayed away from that.
And that's a good point too. I mean, why were these people wanting to go out and do all this stuff? And I kept having issues with my family because they kept talking about, oh, she wants to go to Burger King or she wants to go to McDonald's, talking about my niece. And I'm like, you know what? Don't worry about freaking taking her to Burger King or McDonald's. Take her home and cook her a home-cooked meal. Make her eat freaking hamburgers from home, And it's like, oh, no, can't do that, They got to go out to the restaurant. It's like, you shouldn't be eating at those places even if there wasn't an epidemic going on, I mean, it's the most unhealthy food on the face of the planet. I mean, the potatoes. Okay, when you got a creature that you can put inside of a freaking cardboard box and it doesn't freaking go bad for 5 years, there's something wrong with it.
Yeah. Just
For sure.
thinking now. Sorry, Bob, you go.
No, I was just agreeing.
I just thinking now, back when COVID was rife, there was virtual martial law in the country. You weren't allowed to be out after 8 o'clock at night without a valid reason, and you weren't allowed to visit your relatives. You could only be in groups of 2 or 3 around Christmas time. And there was the Prime Minister and all his cronies having a big party in 10 Downing Street at Christmas time, and that was fine. Yeah, I wasn't. My partner couldn't visit her mother at Christmas Day because the amount of people that were living in the house. And yet we weren't allowed to do that, and yet they were all, about 20, 30 of them, gathering for a big party, celebrating. And it's been repercussions because of that. But they've all got away with it. There's nothing, nothing's been done to them. In fact, the Tories in the UK now, they just a law to themselves. Corruption is rife. I've never seen a government so corrupt in my life. And they just get away with it. It's just, they do it openly almost, and they just get away with it. Never seen it like any government like this ever in my life. I've seen different ones, Labour, and I've seen Tories in the past and been fine, but this one is just awful. It's really, really bad, But there we go.
Yeah, we had a similar deal in New Zealand.
Yeah?
With the COVID. There were people whose parents would die at a hospital, and their children or even spouse wouldn't be allowed to visit them. Like they weren't allowed to visit them while they were dying, and had to just wait outside the hospital. So a lot of people were really angry about the things that the government forced people to do or not be able to do during the coronavirus lockdown. But like I said, I think a lot of it was the ruling class experimenting to see how far they can push us. Because just like you said at Downing Street, our ruling class just partied it up and did everything normally like they'd normally do. They weren't inconvenienced at all. They went for mountain bike rides, and most of them didn't even get the jab at all, although they told us all we had to get it. So similar to Britain.
It was the same here.
Both for us.
We went allowed. Yeah, we weren't allowed in the hospitals and stuff. Yeah, it was exactly the same here.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to go to the North Island.
I want to ask you guys something though, and this is something I've been having a suspicion about too. Do you think that the same companies that gave us the vaccines were the same ones who created the virus originally? Or do you actually, first, do you think that the virus was man-made, and second, do you think that the same people who gave us the vaccines were the same ones who created it in the first place? There you go.
It's very possible, because if you look at what Bill Gates has done with software, a lot of the antivirus software that he's made a lot of money from is intended to battle viruses that he himself has created. Now, I don't know if that's perfectly analogous to what's happening in the medical world, but it's very possible. So I don't know if it's man-made. I don't really have a fixed opinion, because that sort of science is beyond me. I'm a psychological scientist, and I don't know much about virology. So I just wait and see on that one.
Okay.
It's very interesting. There has been a lot of research into coronaviruses for many, many years. And these accidents happen. And they say that the next war will be with, these sort of terrorist measures, where like you were saying, Vince, that was the week that was, you were saying about how with a war, your object is to demoralize your people, so your people won't fight. It just seems that the world's population, not just one country's population, but the entire world's population is being demoralized.
Yep, I believe it. Psychological warfare has been happening to us for a long time. It's 1984 is a lot more closer to truth than what most people realize. We really are the victims of full-scale psychological warfare from our ruling classes.
It's interesting, though, that they didn't need a virulent plague to do it to us. I mean, okay, I don't know if they did or not, but just if it was the release of a bioweapon, if it was an experiment on the population of the world, it's interesting to note that it wasn't a deadly virus that was needed to cause this degree of capitulation that we saw. It was just the fear of a virus, not the actual virus. So that's quite telling, I think.
Yeah, it's quite telling. They could easily do it again. That's what worries me, because the best thing we can do on these shows is just to talk about how the ruling class manipulates people, how they trick people, how they play on emotions and play on fear to get people to act against their best interests. So I think this is the best thing we can do, is really talk about it, shows like this, and hopefully if we can even wake one person up and they don't end up committing murder on the orders of their government, then that's great. It's a great thing. Because,
like you say, the violence, the sort of global unrest, is definitely being. I mean, I'm just horrified that there aren't cries for peace talks all over the media, because I remember that from my childhood. Anytime there was an uprising, peace talks. But now it's like, send some more tanks.
Yeah. I think people have forgotten how bad the last war was. Yeah. The problem is the last really big war, World War II, is now so long ago that most people have no personal experience of it. All that I have is the memory of my grandfather telling me how much it sucked. He was in the 2nd New Zealand Expeditionary Force, so he was in Northern Africa and Italy. And then at the end he was in Austria when the war ended. So yeah, he told me how much it sucked and how much I should never ever, under any circumstances, go and kill people overseas because my government or the newspaper or the priesthood told me that that's what I should do. Just tell them to get stuffed was his exact words that I should do next time. And I think that's such a powerful message that it's something that I shouldn't just hold for myself. It's something that a lot of people ought to hear. That it's really, you can get manipulated like a tool if you follow exactly what's being told to you in the mainstream media.
Yeah.
Got to sharpen up.
Yeah,
No.
I don't
There he
read
is.
any papers. I don't watch any mainstream news. Don't watch TV really. I don't read
Wise,
books.
very
I
wise.
just make my opinions from what a little bit I see on the internet. Yeah, a little bit, and from when I get guided and stuff. Then really, but I think it was started deliberate for sure. I think it was as a huge experiment. They were watching. I see it now because I'm sort of like almost like meditating as we're talking about it, and what I'm seeing is there were watchers. There were people watching it happening. They knew it was going to happen. I'm saying I don't know who they are. I don't know who. I'm not going to say it was this person or that person. Could be something out of this world. I don't know, but they were watchers. There was definitely watchers. They knew it was going to happen, and they were watching it. And I just don't know what it means or anything more than that. But that's what I feel. You know. Definitely some sort of big experiment or something. And as you said, it makes people more scared. If they're scared, they don't, they just lie down and roll over. You know what I mean? They're the people that can be manipulated easy. It's the ones that stand up and say, "Oh, I'm not. I don't believe in this." So they're the ones they're scared of. They're the ones that they, trying to arrest and put away and hide. It's but they're the minority, innit? The ones that stand up are the minority. They're always the minority. You know what I mean? But here we go.
Well, apparently that's all you need. Apparently society's divided into three major sections. There are 30% of society who just really don't care what's going on. They're busy with their own lives, and whatever happens in the political world isn't going to impinge on them. And then there's 50% of people who just do what they're told. They're the ones that people call the sheep. And then there's 20% of people who really care about what's going on.
Yeah.
And people have had it in their minds that you need to wake up the 50% and get the 50% on side. But in fact, you don't need to wake up the 50% because the 50% are followers. You need to wake up the 20%. And you need for the 20% to realize that the checks and balances that we had 2 decades ago have gone and are never coming back. And we cannot go back to what we had in the 70s or go back to, we need to evolve. We need to bring our type of thinking, the way we run our society, we need to actually bring it into the next century, because politics has been shown unequivocally to be a big failure. It's run by a large majority of psychopaths who live off the taxpayers' money. So, like you say, if there aren't 20% of us actively involved, we don't give society that momentum for the 50% to follow. So getting involved in discussions like this and getting small groups of people really passionate and involved is in fact the key. And spreading it to a lot of people isn't effective.
Yeah, my cat just came in with a rat that he caught, and he was yowling. That's why I was laughing. He was yelling. He comes in and goes, yow, 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 because he wants us all to go and see it and how wonderful he is.
Yeah.
So I was trying not to laugh. I had to turn the volume down. It was so funny.
I noticed Bob Dub's cat's bugging her too. He's like clawing at her and stuff.
Okay, we've had our meeting now. Let's go eat food.
So now we are at 59 minutes. I would like to have you guys give yourselves a plug That means tell a little bit about yourself, your social networks and stuff like that. But I'll start with John, and then we'll go to Vince, and then bobdub.
And I'm on OnlyFans.
That's me.
No,
That's me.
I run a paranormal channel, which is developed into more of a spiritual channel called The Wonderful World of Weirdness. I've started a backup channel, which might become more, which is called Mystical Awakenings TV as well. Just started that. I got a games channel called OldJohn's Gaming World. I've got several other channels. I'm not going to go into them. I don't really use them much. I'm on Twitter. I can't remember my name on there. I don't remember. I'm I'm a healer. I'm a spiritual person, so training medium, bit of everything. See the future, all that sort of rubbish. Whatever if you're into that stuff. So that sort of stuff gets discussed on my channels and what have you. And yeah, that's me.
That's good.
Yeah, as for me, if you want to hear more of these ideas that I've been talking about global homo and communism, capitalism, and conspiracies and that kind of thing, they're all in my book, Clown World Chronicles. It was banned from Trade Me in New Zealand, but you can still buy it from Amazon, which is of course worldwide. But that's got a lot of really good ideas in it. That's got a 4.5 rating from 23 ratings on Amazon, so that's been well received by other people. That's the best thing I can recommend if you're interested in more of my ideas. Otherwise, you can just look me up as VJMPublishing on Linktree, and you'll see a link there to my other channels, my other video channels, and my company channel where I've got all my essays and articles. So yeah, there's a lot. If you're interested, there's a lot to read that I've written if you want to buy any book off Amazon.
All right. Your turn, bobdub. Oh, she froze up. I hope she's still there.
I know. She's frozen up. But I can perhaps give a plug for her, because I know that her channel is Tiny Baby Kangaroo on Rumble, and she's got a bunch of videos there that she's done not only with me, but with a bunch of other people that she's interviewed also. And some of those are on the same topics that we've talked about tonight, spirituality and conspiracy and that kind of thing. And they're really good. So go and look at her channel as well, and you'll find some interesting stuff.
Okay. Now, just so everybody knows, this is being live streamed on Minds, Odyssey, and on Rumble. Besides that, after we're done, like I said before I started the recording, I will be sending everybody a copy of this, so that if you guys want to use it for yourself, feel free to do so. And I think this turned out to be one heck of a roundtable. We got through a lot of stuff, and it was like I said in the description, I had no clue where this was going to go, but I knew it was going to be good. And it was awesome having you here, Vince, for the first time. I mean, and you are always welcome back on here. You brought some good stuff. I'd like to go back over some stuff with Plato, but I want to be more prepared when we do that. I don't want to just jump into it, you know what I mean? So if there's a chance that we could do that, that'd be great. I'd love to do that on another...
Absolutely. This was great fun. I loved talking to you. It was really good. I enjoyed this episode. I thought we entertained some people.
Yeah.
And I'd like to speak to you, Vince, about I've seen some of your videos about elementism. Have I said that right? I'd like to speak to you about that at some point as well. About vibrations and stuff like that. Because I'm sort of into all that. So we can sort something else sometime.
Yeah, because I've thought a lot about psychological healing. You know, there's a lot of people in my family who have suffered quite a lot psychologically, and I've had to think hard about ways to try and alleviate their suffering somewhat. Yeah. So I've got a few ideas. I'd love to talk about them. Yeah, anytime, mate.
Yeah, I appreciate. And if you need my help, let me know, because I do remote healing as well. So if you ever need help with your family, I think just let me know.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess bobdub's not going to be coming in.
Yeah, she's going to come back.
So I will go ahead and end this. And again, I thank you guys for being here, and we will talk to you later.
Yeah.
Cheers,
Bye.
Internet.
All right.
Bye-bye.
No, she's back.
Oh, she's back. Oh,
Bye.
hold up. Now,
Right.
okay.
What's happened?
You want to do your plug real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Vince did a good job, but
Yeah, I heard Vince do a good job. Thank you. So
you want to say
I
say
You've
bye?
moved the furniture around.
I'm so sorry. I just knocked my computer. I knocked the off button with my toe. I'm sorry.
That was awesome. See, that was awesome. I love that. That's how we end the show. With bobdub shutting her computer off with her big toe. You guys have a good day.
Yeah.
And
On you.
Cheers, Roger. Cheers.
Thanks, Roger.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye bye.
Right.